Welcome to the Bag Maker's Workroom. I am Chris with Simply Classic, and today is Thursday, March 13th, 2025. Good evening, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us. We are here every Thursday at 7 p.m. Eastern Time where we go live. Tonight, our subject is all about the Julie and the hacks for the Julie pattern. And you can see we have a bunch of Julies here for you. We're going to talk about them. We're going to talk about some hacks and, of course, all kinds of other fun stuff. If you cannot join us live, don't forget you can always watch the recording on our YouTube channel at any time. Make sure you subscribe and click the bell icon to be notified when I post new videos or when we go live. So we have quite a few people joining us already. I see Jennifer is here. Hello, Jennifer. Leslie, good to see you. So glad you can join us. And Rock is here tonight, joining us from his shop. So the first thing we're going to do tonight is I'm going to share some news in the Simply Classic Scoop. Of course, that's where we talk about some of the events we're at that we'll be going to. And we have some kind of fun stuff just to tell you tonight, some behind the scenes stuff. We are then going to talk about our featured product, which is the Julie pattern. Next, we're going to look at creative ways that you can hack the Julie to get some different looks. I'll show you some recommendations for leather, faux leather, and lining that pair nicely together. Then in our Thursday thread segment, we're going to talk about the history of the garment district in New York City. And this is something that I've been wanting to do for a while. So we got a lot of good information there for you. Then we'll be featuring some of our customers' bag in Artistry Avenue. And finally, at the end of the episode, we'll be giving away some PDF patterns. So make sure you stick around for that if you want a chance to win. So if you have any questions during the live stream, please ask them in the chat. If I can't get to them right away, we'll save them for our Q&A at the end of the episode. So we are going to start with the Simply Classic Scoop. And of course, this is the segment where we share what's going on here at Simply Classic, things behind the scene, and events we're going to be at. So the first thing I'm going to tell you is we bought a warehouse. Now, we actually bought the warehouse a while ago. And I'm sure a lot of you remember this area was hit really hard by Hurricane Helene. And that kind of put a stop to renovations. I mean, really, we couldn't even start renovations until a lot of the hurricane people were helped. And even to be honest with you, the damage to our house hasn't even been fixed yet. So we're very thankful that we've been able to start on renovations. The warehouse is in Thompson, Georgia, which is a really small, quaint town just west of Augusta, kind of between Augusta and Atlanta. And we're excited about it because it's a great community. They have a lot of great little shops, and it's growing. We're happy to be there now, kind of as things continue to get bigger and better there. And we are excited about the shop. Now you'll see here in the picture on the left, it's kind of hard to tell, but you see a roof kind of on the right-hand side of that shop. That's going to be where our offices are. So it's going to be kind of the office headquarters, and then the warehouse will be behind it. We are we're starting out with kind of a small warehouse, but I have a feeling we're going to be probably expanding pretty quickly. So wanted to let you know about that. And then the other thing, of course, is in September from the 12th to the 14th, we're going to be in Sacramento for the Sacramento Bag and Sew Expo. Tickets and classes are on sale now. I'll be teaching classes every day of the expo. On Friday morning, we're doing the Julie. Saturday is the Simply Classic Clutch, which will be in leather. Saturday afternoon, I'll be teaching a bag by purse crafters called the Addie, and you can see it here. And that class is on sale now. And then on Sunday afternoon, I'll be teaching the Sorella. So when you go onto the Sacramento Bag and Sew Expo site, you buy the class on their website, and then we invoice you directly for the class kit. Now, if you sign up for the Purse Crafters bag, she's going to actually be the one invoicing you for the class kit. But for the Julie, the Sorella, and the Simply Classic Clutch, if you signed up for any of those classes, you should have already received an invoice from us via email. So if you are part of any of those classes, please make sure you check your email, check your spam. Sometimes things end up there. If we don't see a payment come through for you, of course, we will remind you. The save the date for the Florida retreat with Barbie from GV Design is October 23rd through the 25th. We're going to be in Ruskin, Florida at the Holiday Inn, which is in the Tampa area. The person that's organizing this, I think she's pretty close to coming up with the final price on the total amount for the retreat. So hopefully we'll have that information for you really soon. Barbie is going to be teaching either a faux leather or a cork bag, and then I'll be teaching a brand new leather pattern, and then we'll be releasing the pattern after the retreat. I also want to let you know that we have the leather bag making by machine classes on sale. We have an April session for the Banda Bag, and this Banda Bag is a beginner-friendly class that will get you comfortable working with leather. So if you have never worked with leather before, it's a great class for you. And then I'm also teaching a brand new leather class in May, and we'll be making the lacy. So we're going to switch to the overhead right now so I can show you a little bit about the lacy. This is a red version that I made. It is a crossbody bag. It has a crossbody strap that is secured with sand brown buckles, and of course it's adjustable. You can certainly move the strap, and you can put as many holes in here as you would like. The way the bag is held together is with this Mexican braiding technique, which is really pretty braiding technique. And then of course we have something a little bit different on the flap. The back of the bag is just a plain back. On the inside, we have a slip pocket, perfect for a cell phone. And then the bag is kind of lined and stiffened with the salpa. And salpa is super soft. I mean, this really is a beautiful lining for the bag as far as, feel. But it is just kind of an open bag, but it is really a great size. And I think that if you are looking at increasing your skills or learning something new, a new technique, this lacy bag is going to be a great one for you. So again, I just want to remind you that the Bandit bag is April 4th through 14th. If you've never worked with leather before, it's a great one to sign up for. The color options there are black, golden brown, hot pink, and blue. And each one has an accent of hair on hide in a matching color. The class kit includes Italian leather, stiffeners, lining, hardware, glue, base coat, edge paint applicators, a silver marking pen, etc. So the reason why this is such a good class for beginners and somebody who's never used leather before is because we really try to provide you with everything you need. Of course, not the machine, not the thread, but pretty much everything else. You can really try it out without making a huge investment in all of these things. If you are interested in the lacy and learning something new, then the lacy is from May 2nd to the 12th. It is for confident beginners. So if you have worked with leather in the past, maybe you've taken the Bandit bag class, or you've just worked with leather in the past on your own and you want to learn some new techniques, it's a great class. The color options are distressed russet, elephant gray, textured red, and then very dark brown embossed ostrich, which you see there in the photo. So this class kit includes Italian leather, kangaroo lace, the stiffeners, the hardware, the silver marking pen. It does not come with glue, base coat, or edge paint. If you are interested in continuing your leather journey, then those are things that you're going to go ahead and need to invest in because you'll need them for pretty much every bag that you make. Both classes include an exclusive Simply Classic pattern that will never be released outside of the course, 6 pre-recorded video lessons, 3 live Zoom check-ins, lifetime access to your student portal, and of course the class kit with all of the materials. Registration is open now for both sessions, and let me know in the chat if you have any questions about these classes. The Bandit bag is actually, it's closing soon. So if you are interested in signing up for that, now's the time to do it. because I'm not sure if we're going to be giving that one again. We've given it several times, and I think we're going to be moving on to something new. I also want to remind you that our quarterly mystery subscription box sign-up period is going to open up on March 15th, which is Saturday. So for those of you who don't know, this is a bag making subscription box, and every quarter we will send you a brand new bag pattern. And you can see here in this photo, some of the bag patterns we've done in the past. That's the Boost bag there on the left. We have the Lusso in the middle and the Sienna there on the right. The kit or the box includes the materials you need to make your bag. That's the faux leather, the lining, and the hardware. We also have a lot of hand-picked things that you're going to love in the box. And believe it or not, it has already been an entire year since our first subscription box. So we are so thankful that you all have enjoyed this program, and we're just, a lot of you have loved it. I mean, we're just super excited about it. We're glad we can continue it, and we really want to thank you for your support. If you signed up last March, your annual subscription has ended. So you're going to receive an email on Saturday reminding you to resubscribe if you'd like to keep getting your quarterly boxes. That's only if you subscribed last March. So if you signed up in any other quarter, then your subscription is still active. You don't have to do anything. If you're not sure whether you have an active subscription, I'm going to show you how you can check. So step one is going to be to log on to simplyclassic.net. You are going to go ahead and click on the account button in the upper right hand side, and it's going to bring you or sign you in first, and then you're going to see this drop down menu. And the very first thing on that menu is My Orders. You can see we have it marked with a green arrow. So if you signed up and you paid yearly, then you're going to see back in your history a yearly amount that you paid. Okay, so like in this case, you can see, and this is not a subscription box necessarily, but you can see here that on December 21st, this person paid, but you're going to see the quarterly subscription box in there. The yellow is if you have a quarterly payment. So instead of clicking on My Orders, you're going to click on My Subscriptions, and it will tell you if you have a open subscription. So you can see here, this says that it is active, and the subscription start date is September of 2024. The end date is 2025. So we encourage you, if you're not sure, to go ahead and check and see if you can figure out whether or not you have a subscription box. We have a lot of people that sign up like multiple times, and we're having to email them and say, hey, you already have one. Do you want another one? So just make sure you double check that. If you're not sure, you can email us and we can help you out with it. We have a really great one planned this quarter, so I'm excited. Always excited to see how you like it. So we are going to move on to our featured product. And if you joined us last week, you know that we are starting to feature a pattern of the week. So every Thursday, we'll put a different PDF pattern on sale for $12.49. And it is for the PDF version of the pattern only. So our pattern of the week is this week's topic, which is the Julie. And the Julie is by far our most popular bag pattern. And it is also one of the easiest bags for beginners. So the inspiration for the Julie was a Dooney and Burke bag that I saw a few years ago, and it was called the Lexington. And the one that inspired me was part of their big ostrich collection. I wanted to make my own version, so I made the Julie. So let me know in the chat if you've made a Julie before and what materials you use and if you did anything to modify it, because y'all are very creative and come up with really cool ways to do that. So we are going to switch to the overhead and look at a Julie up close. And what I'm going to show you here is this blue Epsom leather. Now, it is a large tote bag. And I say large, it's about average size, probably mid-sized tote bag. It has two exterior slip pockets. So you see one here, and then there's also one on the back as well. Same thing. It is 12 inches wide by 11.5 inches tall, and it is 4 inches deep. The skill level is confident beginner. And the reason that this bag is fairly good for a beginner is because there's no intersecting seams. So the side seam for the upper lining is on the side, but there's no side seam on the bag itself. The seams on the exterior of the bag are here in the front and in the back. And of course, there's no lining or upper lining seam there. So there's no intersecting seams. And what that means is it really cuts down on bulk. So it really makes it a nice bag to make. We also have an Italian leather maker's kit for this bag. And it actually comes in this Epsom leather. It is 0.8 millimeters thick. We had it scoured down to make sure that it was that exact thickness. And then, of course, you also get the lining and the hardware to make this jewelry in the kit. So we have Leslie that said, I have made so many jewelry bags. I love this pattern and so do my customers. It really is a great one. Robin says, made several jewelries, even taught a class or two faux leather. Yes, great. Thank you so much. Yay. So again, the jewelry pattern is $12.49 for this week only. The sale ends next Wednesday, March 19th. So you don't need a coupon code. The discount's automatically applied when you purchase the pattern. Okay, the last thing I want to mention is we do offer hardware kits for the jewelry. Those are available in bronze, nickel, and gunmetal. We have links to buy the pattern and all of the different kits in the video description below. So we are going to move on to Sharpen Your Skills. And in Sharpen Your Skills, we're going to talk about a fun way to hack the jewelry. So I'm going to put this back up and we're going to show you some pretty cool things. So the first thing I want to show you is this slide. In the fall of 2023, I saw this really amazing bag from Patricia Nash, and it's called the Everton Tote Bag. It's basically the jewelry with a few changes. So I decided to hack the jewelry pattern to make this blue bag on the right. I ended up giving it to my sister-in-law, who absolutely loves it. So I can't show you the actual bag today, but you can see it here in the slide. And I'm going to kind of walk you through how I made this. So first, let's talk about the differences between the Patricia Nash bag and the original jewelry pattern. And the biggest thing, obviously, is that the inspiration bag has these cinch drawstrings on the sides. And I'm going to show you how to do that in just a second. It also uses a snap closure to get that cinch look, while the jewelry has a zipper closure on the top. So you're going to have to leave that off if you decide to do this hack. The other big difference is the handles. I didn't end up doing the handles exactly like the inspiration bag, which they just kind of stitch them in the top seam. But I also didn't do them like the original bag either. So I'm going to switch to the overhead and show you what I ended up doing instead. We're going to go back to this. The pattern is written with hidden strap connectors. And what I ended up doing is actually taking the handle itself, stitching it into the bag by way of the hidden strap connector, basically. Use the same method. And then I just went ahead, as you can see here, and used some rivets to secure it down. It really, I think, gives the bag a more secure, the handles are on there really well. And, you know, adds a little bling, right? Because you're using rivets, you can certainly get creative there. And I just think it makes the whole bag a little bit more secure. So there's also a few things on the Patricia Nash bag that I decided not to replicate on my version, just to kind of keep the changes minimal. We'll put that back up there. And the first one is that the pocket is wider on the inspiration bag. And it's actually like sewn right on the seam. It creates a lot of bulk, so I did not do that. Also, the inspiration bag is a little bit taller and a little bit deeper than the jewelry. And I want to keep it simple, so I did not increase the size for mine. And then finally, the inspiration bag has side seams, and my version does not, as I showed you just a second ago. So I am now going to demonstrate how I cinch the sides. And the first thing you want to keep in mind is that you really want to use a lighter weight material because you're essentially gathering the sides. So we're going to pretend this is a Julie, that this is where the front pocket goes here. This is the side. And what I did was made some drawstring pieces. These are two separate drawstring pieces. Because what I did was, as I sewed these seams, I actually sewed the drawstring right into the seam. Okay? So as I stitched down, I just grabbed that drawstring with it. Of course, I punched 2 holes as well. And in the video, in the actual bag, I have some grommets here that this drawstring is fed through. For the sake of this video, I do not do that. But I actually have one of these sewn into each side. So that way, when the bag is formed, you can see this comes out the side. Okay? Now, the main thing that you want to make sure of is that you create some way to cinch these drawstring pieces. Without that, all you have is a couple of drawstring pieces coming out the side of the bag. And the main way to do that is I usually take another piece of faux or leather and I cut it 2 1/4 inches tall. And then I fold it in thirds. So I just fold and fold down, put a couple of clips in, and I stitch down both sides. So even though there's really only one side here that needs to be secured, I go ahead and stitch down both sides of this. Once that's stitched, I take this and fold it in thirds again. So we're going to pretend it's stitched. I fold this down, and then I take this side and fold it down as well, so that I create this little cinch piece that essentially has 2 holes in the middle of it. You can see here. I just stitch down the middle. Now, in the past, I've also used maybe rivets there just to kind of give it a little extra something. You don't have to do that. You can certainly stitch this. Then, once you do that, the way to cinch it, obviously, is to go ahead and put your drawstrings in. And then go ahead and cinch it up. And that will hold it in place. Okay? And then that's going to create your cinch on your bag. And of course, this is the way you would do a drawstring bag. This is obviously the way we did the cinch bag here. You want to make sure that the cinch piece does not come off. So typically what I do is I just go ahead and knot these bottom, figure out how long I want it, and then just go ahead and knot it. And then that prevents that cinch piece from coming off. Okay? So it's really an easy hack. Totally changes the look of the bag. And of course, I have a full YouTube tutorial that is linked below. And I really love this bag. And I hope that some of you use the hack. Of course, if you do it, I encourage you to post the photos of your Julie in the Simply Classic Bag Making community on Facebook. So we are going to move on to perfect pairings. And in perfect pairings, we like to pair some of our leather and faux leather with matching lining and thread. We know when you're shopping online, it can be a little hard to figure out what goes together. So this is our way to kind of help you do that. So for our faux leather pairing, we are going to go ahead and be inspired by the Patricia Nash hack. And we're going to use this brick blue vinyl. It is perfect for it. It is lightweight. It is really makes a beautiful bag. The lining is the color petrol. It's a chambray by Tilda, and you can see it matches it really perfect. And then for thread, we suggest concrete. Now, concrete is a great thread, but it actually really matches well. And I used it when I sewed this seam here. You can see, I mean, it matches almost perfect. So sometimes the color you think is going to match is different than what actually matches. So Robin asked, how far down do you make the holes? And offhand, Robin, I cannot remember what I tell you in the video, but I do give you that measurement in the video to make those. In this case, it came down about 2.5 inches. I'm not sure if that's what I told you in the video, but I think that's a pretty good indication. And I just used a 1/2 inch hole punch. And then, of course, as I mentioned, I put some grommets in there when I did the actual hack. Great question. We, of course, recommend nickel hardware for this. Now, for our leather pairing, use animal print for the jewelry. We actually had some kits that sold out. So we recommend the bag in the animal print itself. We recommend the accents, which would be the handle and the hidden strap connectors in this black leather. The lining we used was a burgundy lining, and this is actually the burgundy chambray by Tilda. And then, of course, we use the black thread either in the Tex 45 or the Tex 70. And I want to show you that we actually have a completed bag in this. I'll pull this here. It just makes a really beautiful bag. I actually use a bag similar to this for my personal use. You can see the bronze hardware works perfectly. And then on the inside, we have the red lining. And in this one, I had to use linen, but of course, the burgundy chambray works great. We used a brown and bronze zipper for it. Okay. So that is what we suggest for leather. Okay, I also want to remind you about our leather conversion chart. So if you go to our website and you look under resources, there is a drop down in the menu where you can pull up that leather chart. Now, all of our patterns are written in yardage. So I tell you, you need a yard or half yard or whatever it may be. But of course, leather is square feet. So that leather conversion chart actually does that conversion for you, and it will tell you how much square feet of leather you need for any of the Simply Classic patterns that we have. Okay, today's Thursday thread is really a great one. I am just fascinated with the garment district in New York City, and that's what we're going to talk about. So, of course, the Thursday thread is where we share stories, and of course, lately we've been doing history, and so we're going to look at this New York garment district history. Now, the garment district is a neighborhood in Midtown Manhattan, and you may also hear people call it the garment center or the fashion district. They're all names for basically the same area. It's a very small neighborhood. It's actually less than 1 square mile, and it's packed with a lot of history. So it became the garment district before it became the garment district. It was notoriously a dangerous neighborhood, and they called it the Tenderloin or the Devil's Arcade. And in the late 1800s, a lot of theaters, hotels, and casinos were built there. It kind of became a hotspot for crime and prostitution, and a lot of residents ended up moving away. Here we have an artist's drawing of a wild street party on the Tenderloin, or in the Tenderloin, right around the turn of the century. The story of how the Tenderloin turned into the garment district is kind of a complicated one, so to understand what happened, we need to go back to the 1800s. The first fully functional sewing machine was invented in 1830 by a French tailor, and you can see a picture of it here. The sewing machine completely revolutionized the apparel industry all over the world. In the 1800s, New York City was the biggest hub for textile storage in the United States. When sewing machines were introduced, it made sense for manufacturing to happen in New York as well. Early garment workers were mostly Eastern European Jews who had left their home countries due to discrimination. In places like Russia, the textile production and manufacturing were huge industries. So a lot of Eastern Europeans were already skilled at that kind of basically work when they immigrated. Back then, most garment production was actually done in people's homes. So a lot of garment workers lived in overcrowded tenement buildings on the Lower East Side of Manhattan, and their apartments essentially doubled as sweatshops. So in this photo from 1890, we can see a makeshift necktie factory that was set up in the parlor of a tenement building. Entire families would work together for 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. Even the small children had to work full-time just to help put food on the table. There was no regulation or oversight, and the conditions were really terrible. If you're ever in New York, you can actually take a tour of these buildings and learn about the people who live there and work there. Let me know in the chat if you've ever visited the Tenement Museum and what it was like. I have not gone, but I was just chatting with one of my team members, Shauna, who went a couple years ago, and she said that it was really an eye-opening experience. They have all the old sewing machines and equipment, and the apartments are furnished just like they were back then. So this picture is from a real family's apartment. It belonged to Jenny and Harris Levine, and they were a Jewish couple who ran a garment factory out of their front room. This is what it would have looked like in 1902. It's actually a very nice looking home, but you have to remember that the conditions were really rough. So a lot of tenements didn't have gas lines or running water until 1901. Sanitation was terrible, and pests and rodents were all over the place. And really, people got sick all the time. It was really terrible. By 1910, the garment industry comprised of almost 50% of the industrial workers in the city. And that was really an amazing statistic to me, 50%. The government started to crack down on at-home manufacturing, so production moved to loft factories instead. And the idea was to give people better working conditions, but that's actually not what happened at all. The factories were still very dangerous, and now the workers were being constantly monitored by bosses who mistreated them. Those conditions are what led to the infamous Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire of 1911. The Triangle Shirtwaist Factory had over 600 employees, mostly immigrant girls and women from the ages of 13 to 23. It was common for the bosses to lock the doors to the factory from the outside to stop people from leaving work early. So one day, a cutting table caught on fire. The blaze quickly engulfed the building, and hundreds of people were trapped inside. There was an emergency fire hose, but it was rotted and rusty from neglect, so it did not work. It did no good at all. And unfortunately, 146 people died that day. This here is a photo of the factory interior after the fire. So before the fire, there were already groups of garment workers organizing for better conditions. And in 1909, the International Ladies Garment Workers Union led over 20,000 workers to strike for better conditions. We can see some of them here with their picket signs in this photo. After the fire, new laws were finally passed to make factories safer. It was a win for the workers, but unfortunately, their troubles were not over. So remember, all of this was happening on the Lower East Side, a few miles away from what is now considered the Garment District. It was prime real estate, and wealthy property owners were not happy with the changes that the garment industry brought to the neighborhood. There was one prominent businessman in particular. His name was Robert Greer Cook, and he wanted to develop the neighborhood into a car-free zone full of upscale shops. He basically wanted to get rid of everyone he said was lower class, including the immigrants and the garment workers. He especially hated that they spent their lunch breaks outside because he said they were getting in the way of people shopping. So Cook created a group called the Fifth Avenue Association, or the FAA. And through the FAA, he convinced the police to cite garment workers for loitering when they were spending the lunch hours outside. This here is a photo we found in a newspaper article from 1909. And it's a little bit blurry, but we can see that there are some workers on the sidewalk, and the police are telling them to keep moving. This was actually their slogan for a while, keep moving, which workers got so fed up with it that they would stand in groups and just shuffle along as slowly as possible. So they were still technically moving and technically following the law, but they weren't moving much. So Cook didn't stop there. Through the FAA, he convinced lenders not to give loans to the garment industry. He also lobbied for zoning regulations that would ban garment lofts in the neighborhood. His campaign was successful. By 1916, 95% of garment manufacturers in the area were forced to relocate. But at first, they had absolutely nowhere to go. And that's because people all over because of that, people all over the city saw what happened on the Lower East Side, and they wanted to stay as far away from the garment industry as possible. So the city created a district specifically for garment manufacturing. The area they selected was in the heart of the Tenderloin, which is how we actually got here, right? We started talking about that, which of course is also known as the Devil's Arcade. And despite the high crime rates, it was a fantastic location in Midtown Manhattan. And if anything, its bad reputation meant that no one was fighting to keep businesses out. By 1920, the Tenderloin's infamous brothels and casinos were replaced by factories, and the garment district was born. So on this slide, we can see an old newspaper clipping about some of those new buildings. A prominent local architect named Eli Jacques Kahn was brought in to design factories and buildings in the neighborhood. And his work completely transformed the look of the neighborhood, and it helped shed its bad reputation. Things looked good on the outside, but there was a lot of crime and corruption behind the scenes. And even though safety had improved, the workers were still being exploited. In 1935, the Department of Labor found that many female factory employees were earning less than $10 a week. And just to kind of give you some context, in today's money, that would be about $12,000, an annual salary of $12,000. So to improve their conditions, the workers continued to strike and negotiate for a fair deal. In response, and this is interesting, but in response, the factory owners hired local gangs to intimidate their employees. The unions retaliated by hiring their own gang members to retaliate and basically intimidate the property owners. And so over time, basically what happened was the mob took over many of the factories and ended up basically controlling the garment district. And that went on for decades. So actually until the 90s. And that's when the local government finally cracked down on corruption. But let's go back to the 40s. When the garment district was in its prime, was in the 40s. And for years, Paris had been the fashion capital of the world. But of course, during World War II, it was under German occupation. As we've learned in other Thursday threads, the labor and materials were diverted to the war, and the French fashion industry kind of came to a screeching halt. So the garment industry in New York saw this as an opportunity to become the new global fashion center. And in 1941, the union teamed up with local government to create the New York Dress Institute. It was a group whose mission was to promote the city as a hub for fashion design. They created a campaign to add special tags to all the garments produced in the city to make clothes from New York feel high-end and exclusive. And you can see one of the tags here, New York Creation, New York Dress Institute, made under the standards of the New York industry. That's pretty cool. So as a result, the New York City's reputation in the fashion world did improve in the 40s. However, the garment district quickly ran into new problems. So in the 1950s, two things happened, two big things. And the first thing was that clothing started to become more casual. So people were wearing more separates and sportswear, which were easier to manufacture. And you can see here, Lane Bryant has a sportswear section ad, and DeVega had some as well. You could buy a cool new shirt for 94 cents. How about that? So the second thing was a big shift in where people lived. After World War II, a lot of people moved from the cities to the suburbs. Companies realized that they could save money and increase production by moving their factories to the suburbs. Outside of the city, rent was cheaper and wages were lower. And because sportswear was easier to make, they could hire less experienced workers instead of people with specialized skills. So in the 50s, a lot of Manhattan-based brands moved their factories to the suburbs in smaller cities around the country. On the slide here, we can see a photo of a woman working in a thread factory in Connecticut. Back in the city, there weren't as much work for skilled workers, and a lot of them ended up moving away, and therefore the next generation really didn't have an incentive to learn those skills. There were certainly some companies, especially the luxury fashion houses, that did stay local. But when they had jobs available, it was often a struggle to fill them because the workforce had changed so much. In the years that followed, the fashion industry went through some more big changes because of globalization. A lot of production was outsourced to countries in Asia where labor was cheaper. And we can see in this map here, it kind of shows how the textile industry workforce changed between 1970 and 1990. That's only 20 years. That's not a very long period of time. But you can see that Malaysia increased 597%. Sri Lanka, 385%. Bangladesh, 416%. I mean, it's crazy. The numbers are crazy. By 1980, 30% of the clothing sold in the U.S. was made overseas. For reference, that number is up to 97% as of 2024. So last year, let's kind of review that again. Last year, 97% of our clothing was made overseas. So all of these changes meant that small businesses were struggling to compete. So there were a lot of mergers and acquisitions that ended up giving the biggest companies even more market share. In the 80s, and even though 70% of the clothing was still made here, most of it came from suburban factories. In the garment district, the number of manufacturers was half of what it had been in its prime. And the trend has, of course, only continued ever since. By 2018, only 4% of the jobs in the garment district were actually in the apparel industry. There weren't enough manufacturers to fill the empty buildings, so the city was forced to change some of the zoning laws. You can see here the garment district in the 60s versus the garment district today. Over the past 6 years, the neighborhood has really changed dramatically. And now you'll find all kinds of offices, shops, hotels, apartment buildings, all in the garment district. It's still called the garment district, but the name is really becoming a relic of the past. In these photos, I mean, again, we can just see how different it looks. Now, I have been to the garment district in New York City multiple times, and to specifically shop for fabrics. And one of the things, I went a couple times pre-COVID, and of course I went one time after COVID, and it's like night and day. It is totally different. All those things we hear that had changed about the city, New York City, is true. So pre-COVID, it used to be that the shops, ground level, were more of the lesser quality product, and the higher up you went in the building, the more prestigious it was. So some of the, like the Elliott Berman, some of those higher end people were really high up in the building. Some of them 16th floor. I mean, just the higher up, the better theoretically it was. And so it was just really interesting. You had to know where to go, and you almost had to have somebody kind of guide you through the process. Post-COVID, a lot of those industries, a lot of those people moved out of the city. They moved into New Jersey specifically, of course, other areas as well. But we had to actually get on buses and get out of the city to do a lot of our shopping. So just a little tidbit there. It was really interesting. So Janet says, think of all the old mill buildings in New Hampshire and Massachusetts on the Merrimack River when we were growing up, Chris. Yes, so Janet is my sister-in-law, and yes, in New Hampshire, there was a lot of those old buildings, and they were all on the river, and I'm sure they were along the river for a reason, because that was an easy way to move things, of course, on the water. And yeah, it's just amazing how much things change. So with all that being said, the industry isn't completely gone. There are still some fashion designers, textile shops, and factories in the garment district. There are even a few that specialize in leather goods and handbags. And this is another interesting statistic. Back in the day, there were over 150 handbag factories within 1 square mile. Isn't that crazy? 150 within 1 square mile. And of course, most of them are gone now. We do have some photos here from two companies that are still in operation. Rainbow Leather is one, and I'm very familiar with Rainbow Leather, know all about them. And then the other one is Park Avenue International. Park Avenue International. So one way that New Yorkers honor the neighborhood's heritage is through art. So to wrap up our segment, let's look at two famous art installations in the Garment District. The first one's called the Big Button. And the Big Button was installed in the 90s, and it was, I think it was originally black or something. And this yellow version was replaced in 2023. The button is 15 feet across, and the needle is 32 feet long, which is about the length of a school bus. And then the second piece is called the Garment Worker. And this is a sculpture that was made by an Israeli artist named Judith Weller in 1984. We can see it here. It features a man working at a sewing machine, and she modeled this in statue form after her father, who was basically worked in the garment district. He worked at a sewing machine. He was a sewing machine operator, and for many years. Judith Weller created it as a tribute to the hardworking Jewish immigrants who were the backbone of the garment industry for many years. And if you go to New York City, you will see both of these installations are right across the street from the Parsons School of Design. And for those of you who know about Project Wonderland, which I'm sure a lot of you do, Parsons School of Design is where all of that is filmed, and of course, big fashion college. And if you go, you can't miss them. You've got to see them. So, in conclusion, kind of give us your thoughts on all this and what we kind of learned and discovered today. I think it's really interesting. And really, the whole segment was kind of started with this garment worker statue. It's just something I've always been fascinated with. So we are going to move on to Artistry Avenue. And Artistry Avenue is where we feature bags made by you, our customers. Each week we share photos that were posted in the Simply Classic bag making community on Facebook or email to share@simplyclassic.net. All of our Artistry Avenue featured pattern makers will win a PDF pattern of your choice. This is open worldwide. And we are usually do 3, but there's so many amazing Julies out there. We decided to do 5 this week. So let's take a look. So this one here is made by Sharon, and Sharon used a piece of leather that she found in a bargain bin to make this Julie. Now she had to improvise. You can see there on the side, the sides are black because she didn't quite have enough leather, but she made it work. And I mean, she did a fantastic job. I'm really fascinated by this piece of leather. We were looking at it earlier. We couldn't tell if it's textured or if it's polka dots, or it's just really, it's very cool. So great job, Sharon. The next one is made from Past to Present Quilt Shop, and she made this Julie to give as a gift. She did it in a burgundy ostrich, which I think is a faux leather. And then, of course, she did a matching lining and really did a fantastic job. Cheryl Whitcomb made this Julie for one of her high school classmates. They both turned 70 last year, and they're still in touch. And I love how she did the straps. She also added some really cool embellishments, including a little pom-pom and a decorative chain. On the inside, it looks like she made a matching pouch or a coin purse, which is just so creative. I love it. And then she also rounded the corners of her zipper overlay there. You can see it on the picture on the right. This here was made by Ellen Harrison, and she made this bag as a birthday present for her daughter. So it seems like the Julie is really a popular gift to give as or popular bag to give as a gift. A lot of people gift it. So I really love the way people use different fabrics on the pockets or on the sides. And it really gives the bag a different look. And I've seen all kinds of combinations mixed and match, and this is a really good example of that here. She did a fantastic job. And then Sherry from Purse Crafters actually made this Julie. She's the one that's organizing the Sacramento Bag and Sew Expo that I'm teaching at this fall. She used a foiled vinyl and a light pink vinyl for the accents. And you can see here, she actually did her pocket in a different color, but not the back of the pocket. Love the strap connectors. I love the way she attached them. And just the lining is a great pop. I mean, just everything is fantastic. I really love the way you take the patterns and make them different. And that to me is just amazing because a pattern is not a rule, it is a suggestion. So thank you again to all of our featured artists. If we featured you tonight, please email share@simplyclassic.net within 30 days to let us know which pattern you would like, and we will give it to you. And over the next couple weeks, we'll be featuring the Alley B and the Fairhaven patterns. And those are two bags we don't see a lot of in the Facebook group. So if you're made any, go ahead and post them in the Facebook group or email them to share@simplyclassic.net so we can go ahead and feature them. All right, we are going to do our giveaway. And before we move on to our giveaway, or before we move on to our Q&A, we're going to give away 3 PDF patterns for the Julie. And of course, the computer picks the winner. So we want you to type the word tote, T-O-T-E, in the chat. You just have to type it one time. It'll pick you up, and the computer will pick the winner while we do our Q&A. And this is open worldwide because it is a PDF pattern. Okay. So let's see if we have any questions. That's right. Okay, so Sandy emailed to ask, on your straps, I see you don't use any stabilizers to stop stretching. Why is that? So that's a good question. I have never had to use stabilizers, I guess you could say, on my straps. I think that sometimes the quality of the material makes a difference. Make sure when you fold the edges over onto the middle, when you actually do your folding, you don't pull at all on your fabric, because that a lot of times you cause it to stretch, even though maybe it doesn't want to. You're just kind of forcing that. And then just know that, walking feet help. So especially if you're using a domestic machine, a lot of the industrial machines have the built-in walking feet. But on the domestic machines, go ahead and stick your walking foot on. Whenever you're doing a long stance or a long stitch, long length, walking feet definitely help. And then, of course, just know that different materials require different methods and different things. So just kind of do what works for you. And, there's nothing wrong with that at all. So Leslie says, how do we register for the Lacey workshop? I don't see it online. So if you go to events, when you go onto simplyclassic.net, on the top bar, you're going to see events. Click on that, and then there's a leather bag making by machine. Click on that, and then you're going to see the Banda and the Lacey. You'll see both of them. And you can go ahead and sign up there. And I think we also have a link in the description. So Rock from Rock Leatherworks asks, do you know what they say? Where you lace once with the woo, you never go back to the moo. Basically, he's referring to kangaroo lace versus regular cow or cattle lace. And it's true. Kangaroo leather or kangaroo lace, the reason why we're using it is so strong. You're not going to pull it out. It does not stretch. It is not going to break on you. It is really a fantastic lace to use. I really have been very impressed with it. Okay, so let's see who won this week. So our PDF winners are Lorena O'Daniel, Sandra Keeley, and Becky Wesley. So congratulations to the winners. Please email share@simplyclassic.net within the next 24 hours if you can, to let us know you've won and what pattern you like, and we will go ahead and get to, oh, I'm sorry, this is for the Julie. This is not, I'm thinking Artistry Avenue, sorry about that. This is actually, you won the Julie, so just email us and we'll go ahead and get to that Julie pattern. All right, so We appreciate you joining us for the live stream. We will be back next Thursday, March 20th at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, where we're going to have another featured pattern. We're going to be looking at the Fairhaven and some really cool ways to do the straps on that. So remember to check our upcoming classes and events. Like I just described, we have a lot of fun things happening, and all of those things are also linked down below. Finally, if you have any questions or ideas for future live streams, you can certainly send them to simplyclassic.net. And until next time, everybody, happy sewing.